Welcome to the assignment discussion and evidence guidance for principles and concepts of strategy, part of the OTHM Level 5 Diploma in Business Management. We'll walk through tasks 1, 2, and 3 and the evidence each needs. This session will help you understand the evidence required for each task, choose one suitable organisation, and keep it consistent for tasks 2 and 3. Use strategy theories correctly rather than just describing them. Apply micro and macro environmental tools to real evidence, and build a justified strategic recommendation for the board. The key message: past work is clear, applied, referenced, and directly mapped to the assessment criteria. The assignment overview. Task 1 is a 1,500-word report on strategy concepts, theories, processes, and strategic options. Task 2 is a memo and poster presentation, equivalent to about 800 words, applying micro and macro analysis to one organisation. And Task 3 is a 500 to 600-word, 10-minute presentation, comparing strategic options and justifying one recommendation. Tasks 2 and 3 must use the same organisation, so choose a business with enough public information. Use the assessment criteria as your checklist. Learning outcome. 1 covers business strategy, its levels, the strategic framework, and the strategy development process. Learning outcome 2 covers types of strategies, the strategic management process, and organisational theories. Learning outcome 3 covers explaining and applying micro and macro tools. And learning outcome 4 covers strategic options, comparing them, and recommending and justifying one. Use the criterion numbers as your subheadings, choosing the organisation for tasks 2 and 3. Good choices are large organisations with published annual reports, clear competitors, and recent strategic challenges, for example Tesco, Ryanair, Netflix, Apple, an NHS trust, or a local retailer with public evidence. Avoid a business with no accessible information, relying only on personal opinion, or changing the organisation between Task 2 and Task 3. Here's the structure for the 1,500-word Task 1 report. About 100 words, introducing the purpose and what business strategy means. Around 450 words on strategy principles, covering the definition, levels, framework, and development process. About 650 words on theories and concepts, covering types of strategies, the management process, and organisational theories. Around 200 words explaining strategic options. And a short conclusion: use textbooks and reliable sources, explained in your own words. For Criterion 1.1, define business strategy clearly, explaining that it links objectives, resources, and competitive positioning with long-term direction and decision-making. Use one short example to show understanding, such as Tesco strengthening online grocery, price competitiveness, and loyalty data to defend market share. Add a citation to a strategy textbook, and don't copy definitions without explaining them. For Criterion 1.2, compare the levels of strategy. Corporate strategy is the overall direction, such as which markets or countries to operate in. Business strategy is how a unit competes, such as cost leadership or differentiation in retail. And functional strategy is how departments support that, such as an HR recruitment plan or a marketing campaign. Comparison means explaining similarities and differences, not just listing them. For Criterion 1.3, compare the elements of a strategic framework: vision, the future direction; mission, the purpose; values, the guiding principles; objectives, the measurable targets; analysis, the internal and external evidence; and implementation, the actions, resources, and timescales. Explain how each element connects to the others, for example, how a mission guides objectives, while analysis tests whether they're realistic, and use a diagram or table to make it clear. For Criterion 1.4, explain a strategy development process. First, analyze, using internal data, customer needs, competitors, and the macro environment. Second, set direction, clarifying vision, mission, and objectives. Third, generate options such as growth, cost reduction, or differentiation. Fourth, evaluate options for feasibility, risk, and benefit. And fifth, implement and review, allocating responsibility and monitoring KPIs. Use a recognized model such as Johnson, Scholes, and Whittington. Differentiate the types of strategy. Cost leadership competes through lower cost and efficiency, like Aldi and Lidl. Differentiation competes through uniqueness or quality, like Apple's brand and ecosystem. Focus strategy targets a narrow segment, such as a niche or specialist provider. And growth strategy expands products, markets, or channels. Explain how each is distinct and when it's suitable. For Criterion 2.2, compare the strategic management process, environmental scanning, strategy formulation, implementation, evaluation and control, and feedback and learning. Show how scanning informs formulation, how implementation converts plans into action, and how evaluation checks whether outcomes match objectives. Feedback makes strategy an ongoing process, not a one-off document. For Criterion 2.3, discuss the organisational theories that affect strategy. The resource-based view, where strategy depends on valuable, rare, hard-to-copy resources like brand or patents. Porter's generic strategies, explaining competitive positioning. Contingency theory, where the best strategy depends on the environment. And stakeholder theory, where strategy must consider the groups affected. Discuss means explain each theory and evaluate its relevance to strategy. For Criterion 4.1, explain the concept of strategic options. The possible choices a business can select to achieve its objectives, responding to evidence from internal and external analysis, and realistic for its resources. Examples include market penetration, selling more to existing customers, product development, introducing new products, market development, entering new markets, diversification, moving into new products and markets, and cost reduction or digital transformation. Here's the evidence plan. The memo to your mentor explains the techniques, covering what each tool measures and why it's useful. The poster applies the techniques, showing evidence from your chosen organization and its environment, and the references support your analysis. Importantly, this task asks you to explain and use the techniques, so a definition alone won't meet the application criteria. For Criterion 3.1, explain techniques for measuring the microenvironment, the factors close to the organization, such as customers, competitors, suppliers, employees, and local stakeholders, which directly affect day-to-day performance. Suitable techniques include Porter's 5 forces, stakeholder analysis, competitor analysis, customer segmentation, supplier power analysis, and an internal capability scan. For Criterion 3.2, apply those micro-techniques. With Porter's 5 forces, rate each force and explain its impact, for example, high rivalry from price competition and low switching costs. With a stakeholder map, plot power and interest, for example, regulators with high power and customers with high interest. With competitor analysis, compare 2 or 3 rivals on market share, pricing, and service. Use current data from annual reports, news, market reports, and regulators. Here's a poster layout for the microenvironment. On the left, your chosen organization, a short background, its main market, and key competitors. In the center, Porter's 5 forces, with 1 or 2 bullets per force using high, medium, or low ratings. And on the right, your stakeholder or competitor analysis, the key findings, and what it means for strategy. Keep the poster visual, with charts and short evidence-based points rather than long paragraphs. For Criterion 3.3, explain techniques for measuring the macro environment, the wider external forces the business can't fully control that usually affect the whole industry. Suitable techniques include PESTLE analysis, scenario planning, the external opportunities and threats from SWOT, market trend analysis, and risk analysis. For criterion 3.4, apply the macro techniques using PESTLE. Political factors like government policy and trade rules can raise costs or create opportunity. Economic factors like inflation and interest rates affect pricing and demand. Social factors like changing habits shape products and channels. Technological factors like AI and e-commerce improve efficiency or cause disruption. And environmental and legal factors create compliance duties and reputational risks. Link every factor to your organization, not just the industry. Here's the Task 2 memo structure. Start with a professional heading, to, from, date and subject, addressed to your mentor. State the purpose, that the memo explains micro and macro measurement techniques. Explain the micro techniques, such as Porter's, stakeholder or competitor analysis, and why each is useful. Explain the macro techniques, such as PESTLE, trends, or scenario planning. And finish with a short conclusion on which techniques are most useful for your organization. Keep the memo concise and put the detailed application on the poster. For Task 3, here's the 10-minute board presentation structure. 1 minute opening on the organization, purpose and strategic issue. 2 minutes summarizing the key findings from your Task 2 micro and macro analysis. 3 minutes comparing 3 realistic strategic options. 3 minutes selecting one option and justifying it. And 1 minute on implementation, KPIs and risk controls. Don't repeat Task 2 in full. Use its evidence to justify your Task 3 decisions. For criterion 4.2, compare the strategic options. Market penetration grows share in the current market, but faces competitor response. Product development brings new revenue, but carries development cost and failure risk. Market development reaches new customers or regions, but faces entry costs and limited local knowledge. Diversification spreads risk, but brings high uncertainty. And cost leadership protects margins, but can harm service quality if badly managed. Explain the benefit, the risk, and criterion 4.3, recommend and justify one strategic option. A strong recommendation states the selected option, gives a clear reason based on your Task 2 evidence, sets out the benefits for competitiveness and growth, the resources required, the risks and how to manage them, and the KPIs to measure success. A weak recommendation just says the business should expand because it's good, with no evidence, no comparison, and no acknowledgement of risk. Here's the recommendation logic in action. Your findings. PESTLE shows customers shifting online and technology changing service delivery, and competitor analysis shows rivals investing in digital channels. The options compared: market penetration, product development, and digital transformation. The recommendation: digital transformation focused on the online customer experience. The justification: it responds to customer behavior, protects competitiveness, and improves efficiency. And the KPIs: online sales growth, retention, app usage, and cost per transaction. Follow the pattern: evidence, option, comparison, recommendation, on referencing, justification, and academic KPIs. Integrity. Use sources for your definitions and models, annual reports, market and competitor data, and regulatory evidence. Avoid unreferenced claims, copying model descriptions, using AI-generated references, submitting screenshots instead of written analysis, or overusing quotations. Explain everything in your own words. A submission checklist. Task 1 is a word report of around 1,500 words. Task 2 is a memo and poster, equivalent to 800 words. Task 3 is a recognized presentation format, 500 to 600 words over 10 minutes. Tasks 2 and 3 use the same organization. All criteria are covered and easy to identify. Harvard citations and a reference list are included, and files are clearly named. Submit to learner work at ukversity.co.uk after completing the unit delivery. Work is referred. On content, being too descriptive rather than analytical, not applying to a real organization, a Task 2 poster that doesn't use the techniques, a Task 3 recommendation that isn't justified, or an inconsistent organization across tasks. On presentation, no Harvard references, poor structure and unclear headings, no evidence from reliable sources, or the wrong format and missing files. So, to finish, start with the assessment criteria and build your headings around them. Choose one organization with enough evidence. Explain the strategy theories first, then apply them to real business evidence. Use your Task 2 analysis as the foundation for your Task 3 recommendations. And submit the correct files with Harvard references. Refer to the ebooks on Moodle, and send queries and submissions to learnerwork at ukversity.co.uk. Finally, your key references and further reading for this unit include Johnson, Whittington and Scholes, Exploring Strategy, Porter's Competitive Strategy, Barney on Firm Resources and Competitive Advantage, Ansoff on Strategies for Diversification, and the OTHM Assignment Brief. Use these in Harvard style, with in-text citations and a full reference list. That's everything. Good luck with your strategy assignment.